credit for it. But, Andre Koen is an energetic presenter, powerful communicator, and a dynamic leader. His educational influence spans the North America continent. Andre integrates his abilities as an improvisational comedian, large group facilitator, keynote speaker, and classroom teacher to captivate and educate his audience. There are many words that define Mr. Andre Koen: educator, student, comedian, speaker, activist, facilitator, coach, mentee, mentor, leader, team member, community organizer, diversity trainer, motivator, friend, and son. The most representative, however, is Andre the Enkindled Spirit. Please give a crossroads welcome to Mr. Andre Koen, president and founder of AM Friday.
Well, I want to say, first and foremost, I am glad to be here. Not just here, but on the planet. I'm glad to be here. What I know is that there are some people who did not wake up this morning who are not here. That there are people who are in other parts of the world, that their here is very different than our here. There are people who woke up this morning who didn't have food to eat, places to live, water to drink. So I'm so happy that I'm here. One of the things that I think is important before we jump into the presentation is to be grateful for what we have, even if what we have isn't much. Be grateful. Now, I will warn you ahead of time that it might sound like I'm preaching. But I am my father's son. See, my father was my pastor growing up. So I'm a preacher's kid. And so if some of that comes out, it's not my fault. Blame my parents. Right? I also am the son of a man who joined a movement in the late 60s and early 70s called the Black Panthers. Has anyone ever heard of the Black Panthers? So my father was a member of the Black Panthers. And I'm not talking about Wakanda Forever. I just want to put that out there. Okay, y'all don't know what I'm talking about? Wakanda Forever? No. The movie, Black Panther? No? Oh, that's right. It's PG-13. I'm just teasing. All right. So I don't know what you know about Black Panthers or what you think you know about Black Panthers, but the Black Panther Party was a political party designed to raise awareness and to raise black people out of poverty. And so one of the remnants of the Black Panther Party movement is something that we all enjoy, particularly in our public education systems, which was breakfast. Right? So whatever you think about the breakfast that you get at school, you owe your gratitude to the Black Panther Party for understanding that before we can get food in your head, we got to get food in your mouth. And so we can't study hungry. We can't do anything hungry. So the Panthers said we want to do something about that. But I will also let you know that my father had a conversion, and he converted from all that activism that he was doing out in the streets. He turned that to the church. We became very active in the church. So if you hear me preaching, that's where it comes from. So some of the stuff I want to talk to you today about is the lies that you've been told about who you are. Did you know people have been lying to you about who you are? So in 1970, so I'm old. I just want to put that out there. I'm old, right? So my birthday is October 30th, 1970. I know. I'm like old as some of your grandparents, right?
You look young.
Thank you. Good, clean living, man. Good, clean and lots of water. Lots of water. So lying. Yes, I'm 47 years old. I'll be 48 in October.
My dad's one here.
Is he? Okay, cool. Yeah. So I could be your dad. Think about that. I could be your dad. Right. Now, the interesting thing about that is that on October 30th, my mom actually started on October 29th. So my mom goes into labor. And so she goes into the hospital and she's having contractions and all this stuff. And they're like, push and she, and then, giving ice to my mom and all this stuff. And then I'm born. Boom. I'm born. But it was like that too. It was a sound, the Big Bang, that was me. Okay, anyway. So I'm born. And so the nurse does something very interesting to me, with me and to me. So she takes my vitals, how long I am, and she writes that down. She writes down how much I weigh. She writes down, she takes my foot, and I don't know why they ever do this, because I don't know how it's useful, because I've never had to give my footprint any other time, but they took my baby foot, put it on a stamp, and then put it on a piece of paper. I don't know what purpose that serves. Anybody else use that as identification? You're like, what's your foot look like? It's just interesting that they do that, right? So they did all that stuff. But then she did something that changed my life forever. She was going down her list, and she came to something called race. And in 1970, in Dayton, Ohio, there were 3 choices that she could choose from: black, white, and other. Those were the 3 choices that she had at her disposal: black, white, and other. And so she looked at me as a tiny baby. She looked at my parents. She looked at her list. She looked at me. She made her decision. And what decision do you think she made, given black, white, or other? Black. That obvious? Right? But here's the thing that I always thought about that just marvels me. It really twisted my noodle, so to speak, right? Makes me think critically. I was here before she made a decision. So what was I before she made a decision?
A baby inside a belly.
I was a baby inside of a belly. I was what? I was blazing.
You were nothing.
Huh?
You were just a baby.
I was just a baby. A baby what?
A white baby. You was your skin, a baby boy. Your skin wasn't filled that. I was talking about white.
No, I hear you. No, those are good things. Those are good things to think about. But this is what I want you to think about. I want you to think about this. I was here. I was born. And when I was born human. But when she checked that box, what did I become?
Black.
I became black. I want you to think about your birth. Because again, I started this conversation saying that there are people who are lying to you. That are lying to you. You were born human. But the society that you grew up in turned you into something else. Where are white people from? And don't say Duluth or St. Cloud.
From the baby,
So from an egg, okay, I got you. Let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase that a little bit, right? So I have a 3-year-old daughter, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's really conflicted because the world is telling her something that her mind already knows is not correct. So my wife is Native American, and my daughter is, and I'm African American, and so my daughter is a mix of the two of us, right? And so, I'm kind of brown, and her mother is more tan, and my daughter sees herself as kind of this caramel macchiato color, right? I mean, this nice blend. Do you get lattes, right? Yeah. So she considers herself to be latte color, right? And she said to me one day, and I couldn't help it because she said, "Dad, you're not black." And I'm thinking from a 3-year-old's perspective. She's right. I'm brown. Right? Seriously. I'm brown. So she's right. I'm not black. But America treats me different than how I was born. There are no white people. There are no black people. They're human beings that our society has tried to turn us into things as opposed to allowing us to recognize who we are. Now, what I'm not saying is don't be proud of who you are. I want you to be proud of who you are. I want you to use that pride in this society to determine the kind of life you want to live. But you are not limited by what other people think about you. I want to let you in on a little secret. What other people think about you is none of your business. It's none of your business what other people think about you. When I say that, what do you think I mean by that?
People don't have worry about what you is.
People don't have what?
To worry about what you is.
Yep, people don't have to worry about what you are. Yeah. What other people think about you doesn't change who you are. Yeah, what they think about you is none of your business. As a matter of fact, my grandmother would say, "You just nosy." You know what social media is? Social nosy. People want to get friends and they want to be liked by all these other people, but do you like yourself? Because if you don't like yourself, what other people think about you doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So today I want you to stop thinking about the lies that people have been told you, and think about who you are and who you want to be. Who you want to be. All right? So that's important. So a couple of things I want to, truths about human beings that I want us to kind of understand and explore, and then we'll do a couple of activities if that's cool. Do you mind doing a couple of activities with me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to do a couple of activities with me? Oh, okay. Cool. That's a better way to frame that, huh? All right. So here's a couple of things that I want you to think about. There are some truths as young people. If you can get these things now, you don't have to go through what I went through to get to where I am today. And mind you, I wouldn't change my journey for anything. It made me who I am. But if I can help you speed up the process, I want to do that because it took me a little longer than it probably should have to reveal these things about myself, right? So here's one truth about human beings, about people who are just like you, that I want you to remember. That people do what they want, when they want, and only when they want to do things, right? So you only do what you want to do.
And how they want to do it.
And how they what?
How they want to do it.
And how they want to do it, right? Yes. That's only if you're out of jail. I will tell you that even in the jail context, you do what you want to do. Nobody can make you do anything, not even in the jail context. There are consequences for not doing things, but you do things because that's what you want to do. You don't want the consequences, or you want the benefits.
But there's
right?
consequences for doing something.
There are always, can you say that louder so everyone can hear you?
There's some consequences for doing something.
I would tell you, he said that there are some consequences for doing some things. And I will tell you that there are consequences for doing everything. Some of those consequences are positive and some of them are negative. But there are always consequences. Yes, sir.
So, like, negative consequences, I got favorites, like, if you don't want to do that, so you don't want to get that paperwork, if you don't want to do that, and you're not trying to get in trouble, you basically get forced to do it because you don't want to have that paper. You don't want to have that consequence.
No. That's a good point, right? So there's a couple of ways to kind of interact with the world, right? One is saying, I don't want to get consequences. I don't want to get that paperwork. That's one way to approach life. So what are you constantly doing when you're looking at things you don't want to do? You operate it. Go ahead.
I always want to say, you're thinking about, like, you got, different things you want to do. Like, saying you want to do this, saying you want to do that, but at the same time, you're thinking about it, like, should I do it or should I not do it?
So you're constantly doing this. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Is it worth the consequence or not? Right? So you're always living in fear. If you are constantly looking at the negative consequences, you're living in fear. I don't want to do this. I don't want that to happen. But when you're living in fear, you can't get what you want because you're focused on what you don't want. Right? So the first thing to recognize is that human beings can learn, change, and grow. Who you are today is not who you will be in 5 years. I guarantee it. You won't be the same person in 5 years. You won't be the same person in 10 years because I'm not the same person I was when I was 17. Thank God. Thank God. I had opportunity to grow and to change, right? Now, here's the funny thing about learning, changing, and growing. Do other people have to see evidence of your learning, your changing, and your growing to know that that's happening? No, they don't have to see evidence. Anyone ever grown a plant or planted seeds before? Please raise your hand if you planted seeds before or grown a plant, right? So when you plant that seed in the ground, do you go back and check it every 15 minutes? No. Why? Why don't you do that?
It don't grow in that long time.
It doesn't grow in that amount of time. So how will I know that you're growing, that you're changing? I will only know that over time. So stop trying to be grown before your time.
That's exactly my life.
That's your life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 17, but do I look grown?
You look like you're 17.
But do I act like I'm 17?
That's the real question. Do you act like you're 17? Right?
No, I don't.
Right? Do you act like you're 17? Right? So yes, sir. Say that again. Oh, yeah. His question was, what happens if you have to adapt to your life early? What I would say is that you play the cards that you're dealt the best you can. But recognize that the choices that you make are the ones that you had to make. And so you have to, there's something called, anyone ever heard of this concept of psychic armor? Psychic armor? Okay, cool. So I grew up in a place that would be, I think the fancy word for this is called the hood. That's the technical term for it, right? So in that particular context, I had to wear psychic armor. Just because of, to the point that you're making, right? So in that context, this was my psychic armor. This was my psychic armor. Somebody looked at me funny. What do I have to do with my psychic? I have this psychic armor. How do I respond to them looking at me? What you looking at? Hey, don't be eyeballing me. What? I don't know. That's what we used to say when we want to get it popping off. You say popping off? I don't know how. Right? Or the other term is to fight. We're going to fight. Right? scrap, throw bricks, but I don't know, right? So to your point, right? So say you have to do that, right? So here I am now. I am 47 years old. I had to do that when I was 17 just to survive. I had to just do that and right? Scaring folks that I had to survive. But now I'm 47. I have a 3-year-old. She asked me a question or she looks at me funny. And what if I went to her and I was like, oh, what you looking at? What would you say about that? It's abusive. You would say what else? What's that? Say it a little louder.
Child protective.
Oh, yeah, child protection needs to be called, right? There was another hand over here somewhere. Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah. You would say that was a threat, right? You would say that that's inappropriate. But I would say, you know what? That's how I grew up. That's all I know. But at some point, I have to take, even if I have to grow up in an environment fast, I got to recognize that as things change, I got to change too. So if I keep using the same armor, it will be funny. Anybody ever play football with a uniform? No. Right? Are those uniforms light or are they kind of heavy? They can be heavy, right? Particularly if you got dirt on them because you've been playing. But if you got a clean uniform, it's usually light. That was a joke. Anyway. Can you imagine me in a anybody, you've seen the NFL, right? Anybody seen the NFL and the pads and all the stuff that they wear? Can you imagine them wearing that swimming? No. Can you see them in the Olympics on the blocks? And then what would you say about that? You would say what? Crazy. That they look crazy. I don't like using the word crazy, but but I think you understand what he's going at, right? It's inappropriate for that context. And so we got to understand sometimes our behaviors are inappropriate for our context. I'm going to give you a little secret, and staff might get mad at me, but they don't have to invite me back. So I'll say this, right? So I taught middle school and high school for 8 years. And at the beginning of my career, I saw this phenomenon that I couldn't understand. And then I thought about my own childhood, and then I had to apologize. So when I taught school, there was this phenomenon that was happening with my students where there was something wrong. I don't know if it was genetic or cultural or what, but for whatever reason, their pants couldn't stay on their hips. They always fell down. And they had this thing that they called it sagging. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or experienced that. And when I first started teaching, I was the pull up your pants police. I was writing tickets all the time. Pull up your pants, telling students, pull up your pants, pull up your pants. I was writing demerits and all this kind of stuff. Pull up your pants. And my students got so frustrated with me that they stopped pulling up their pants and they pulled down their shirt. As if that was the same thing. Anybody ever seen somebody do that or experienced that? Okay, cool, right? So I was doing that for a number of years, and then first of all, I got tired of doing it because I was doing it all the time, right? But then I figured out why my students were doing that. I figured out why. Because I sat down with a group of them and I said, okay, tell me what's going on with the sagging thing. And guess what some of my students told me? What? That's what we do in a neighborhood. And I was like, oh. It harkened me back to this movie called Stand and Deliver with James Olmos and Lou Diamond Phillips. Now, I will tell you, so look it up on Netflix, because y'all can Netflix and chill, but I think that means something different now than when it did when anyway. So look it up on Netflix. Look it up on Netflix. Stand and Deliver. There's this episode or this part of the movie where the teacher is confronting a young man, and the young man is from the barrio, which is kind of the Hispanic or Latin version of the ghetto or the hood or the trailer park, right? So that's where it's from. Yes.
We watched this in her class.
Oh, you watched it already?
Where they do that testing and then they say they cheated.
Yeah. But here's the part I want to, so you can help me with this. Make sure that I'm telling the truth on this, right? Because there's this one part where James Olmos is talking with Lou Diamond Phillips, the student, and the student goes up to the teacher and he says, "Yo, teach, I need some more books."
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Right. And what did the teacher say?
You
Yeah.
talking about the teacher that had a heart attack? Then they fell on the staircase?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Right? So he came up to the teacher. He said, "Teacher, I need another set of books." And what did the teacher say to him?
Yeah.
He said, "Why? Why do you need more books? Because I just gave you some books." And so the young man said, "I need some home books." Now this puzzled the teacher. The teacher was just really puzzled by this because he gave him a set of books and he's talking about these home books. He said, "What do you mean home books?" He said, "Teach, I need a set of books for school and I need a set of books for home because I can't be caught in my neighborhood carrying books." And so what do you think the teacher said?
He gonna bring it to his house.
He said, "Yeah, I'll give you another set of books." One of the things I realized about my students and telling them to pull up their pants was that they were doing that because that's how they needed to survive in their community, their neighborhood. That was their psychic armor. But what I also needed them to understand was that was a particular context. That was one place where that worked well. But if you go to a job interview, what do you have to look like? The people that you're interviewing, or the people that are interviewing you. So you have to change given the context. Now, does that mean that you're changing who you are? Does that mean that you're being fake, you're being phony? I would call it surviving in my context. You got to survive. Get a job. As young men, as young women, as we think about how we survive in this, when we become adults, some of the things that we used to do for fun, we don't get to do anymore. I used to love video games, but I had to put away my video games because I got a 3-year-old that my video game time now is spent reading little goofy books and doing little goofy dances. Are you ready? My hands are high, my feet are low, and this is how I popsicle. Right? Do y'all know what I'm talking? Have you ever done that? Right? Yeah. I'm doing that every day. You know, my hands are high, my feet. Right? You know, goofy stuff. Why? Because I'm going to invest in her because somebody invested in me. Somebody invested in me. Let me just hit a couple more of these things. And all human behavior is goal-directed. All human behavior is goal-directed. Everything you do is directed towards a goal. The problem is most of us don't know what that goal is, or we don't want to be honest about what that goal is. All human behavior is goal-directed. But I would tell you, I know a shortcut to figuring out what your goal is, and I'll tell you that in just a second. What is an attitude? What is an attitude?
What are you talking about?
I'm talking to you, right here.
Are you sure about that?
I got 2 eyes and they don't cross. What's an attitude? You just did an attitude. Very good. What's the attitude, sir?
Demeanor.
It's your demeanor. That's a big word, dude. What do you mean by demeanor?
Like, how you speak, how you choose to react.
How you choose to react, how you speak. Attitude. What else is attitude? How many of y'all got attitude right now? I'm just joking. Right? Attitude.
Everybody got an attitude.
Everybody has an attitude. So this is what I like to offer you. That I didn't understand attitude until I got older. It took me a long time. And I told you my dad was a pastor, right? So on Sunday, we would go to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We would stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So church all day on Sunday. So Friday night, I asked my dad for the car. I'm 17. I asked my dad for the car. My dad loves me. What does he say?
No. Yes.
He says, yes, he loves me, right? So I pick up my boys. We're driving around. We're cruising around town looking for girls. I don't know what would have happened had we found girls, but we're cruising for girls. I fill the car up with gas. I come home before curfew. My dad says I have what kind of an attitude?
A good attitude?
I have a positive attitude, a good attitude, right? So we're cool. The interesting thing is that my parents wanted to raise us better or different than how they were raised. And so they wanted to do talk therapy. They gave us, punishment. And when that stuff didn't work, they went to yelling and screaming, right? And so for the first 7 years of my life, I thought my name was Boy, because my dad would be like, "Boy, come over here. Boy, sit down." So I thought that. So Sunday comes. My best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, "Andre, can you pick me up for the movies?" I go to my dad and I ask him to borrow the car, and what does he say?
No.
Not only does he say no, but he gives me a sermon about how I'm going to Hades, right? And in my family, the worst consequence was that you could go to Hades. Didn't cut the grass, going to Hades. Didn't do the dishes, going to Hades, right? So as a result of that, how do I respond to my dad giving me that no? Negative. Go ahead. Yeah, I have an attitude. What kind of attitude? A negative or a bad attitude. So what was the difference between Friday night and Sunday? Say that again. On Friday, I got what I wanted. On Sunday, I didn't. So when you have a attitude, a bad or negative attitude, what is that a signal of? What should that be signaling to you? Yes, sir. So calm down. That you're spoiled. Okay, let's back it up. Let's bring it home. Anybody ever got a text about a party 5 minutes before it started? Anybody ever get that kind of text, right? So when that happened, when I've seen this kind of happen, what I've noticed is, so a young person to get a text, boom, oh man, oh this party's gonna be popping, right? So the young person goes to the parent, and the young person says, "Look, Mom, I just got a text. There's a party starting in 5 minutes. Can you drop me off?" What do parents typically say about last minute plans? Yes, sir.
No.
Go ahead.
No, but I never tell my parents.
Oh, you never tell your parents, so you just go hit the spot, huh?
Yeah, I just tell them I'm going to go to a friend's house and study for a test.
Yeah, so you say you're going to go to a friend's house and study for a test. What is your name?
Brad.
Yes! Do you remember me? Okay, cool. I was like, I know him. He's like a celebrity. He's a celebrity, right? No, so how do parents usually respond to those last minute plans? They don't, right? And when they say no to those things, or why do people choose not to tell their parents that there's a thing? Because there's an opportunity for them to say no. And how do people respond when they get told no about something they want to do? A bad attitude, a negative attitude, right? Negative attitude. All right, so let's move on. Let's do this activity. I'm going to do this activity. So on these cards, now I'm going to need your help spreading these out. Can you help me out? All right, cool. Can you make sure that folks everybody gets one of those cards on that side? Mr. 17-year-old, can you make sure everybody on this side gets a set of those cards?
Yes.
You actually can just pass out a stack of them, and they can do it themselves. They can do it themselves. So does everybody have a card? you got extras? Yeah, I take my extras. You know I would do better than that, man. You know it. All right. So on the back side of that card are letters A, B, and C, and on the bottom is 1, 2, 3. So what I want you to pay attention to at letter A is I want you to tell me what is that a picture of in letter A? What do you see in letter A? There's a bird eating somebody. Please raise your hand if you see a bird eating something or someone. All right, cool. Yes, sir. Well, we're not over there yet. We're still at letter A. Still at letter A. Please, sir. Yes. What else do you see? Oh, okay. You don't tweaking. Don't do. I'll also submit to you that there is also an island with 2 trees, a fish, and a person in a canoe. Yes, sir. You have your hand up. Yes, like a whale. Right? So for those who don't see it, or who see it now but didn't see it before, what did you have to do to see the second image? You had to flip it upside down. But some people kept turning their cards, and they flipped it and flipped it and flipped it, and they had rotisserie chicken. So what else did you have to do outside of just flipping the card? You had to focus on something different. So if you turn your card upside down, turn that same image upside down, you should be able to see 2 trees, an island, a big fish, and a person in a canoe on a lake with birds in the background. So here's my question. Oh, there it is.
I was thinking those are trees.
So was that second image there before you saw it?
A bird. Yeah.
We didn't want to see it.
You didn't want to see it, but you had to change your focus. You had to change your perspective.
God, I know those are birds.
So if you see just what other people see, that's all you'll see until you change your perspective. All right? Let's go to letter B. What is that a picture of in letter B? It is the word liar, and it is also a face. It is the word liar, and it is a face.
That go crazy. That's crazy.
Now, the interesting thing about that is, for me, when I look at this card and I look at this picture, I can see the face or I can see the word liar, but I cannot see both at the same time. That's just me. Maybe you can, but I can't. So what that teaches me is that what I lock onto is what I'll be able to see. Right? So everybody see it?
I can see the eyes.
Oh, you just see the eyes now? Yeah, it spells the word liar, and it is a face. So if I'm looking for my life to be good, what am I going to see? I'm going to see good. If I'm looking for my life to be bad, I'm going to lock on to all the bad. And so how you just decide to see your life. And it was funny. What was your name, sir? Darius? No, I can't hear you. Darius. All right. So Darius said something that was very interesting. He said, what if you had to grow up early? Play the hand. Grow up early. Do what you need to do. But at some point you have to realize what you're locking on to. And that if you're locking on to this, there could be something else that you could also lock on to. The great thing about human invention is that it always can be remade. We can do it again. We call that recycling, or the fancy term now, hippies call it upcycling. Right? You can upcycle your mind. You can upcycle your life. Let's skip down to, let's do this one. So there are white letters there that form a phrase. It's not quite a sentence, but it's a phrase. What I want you to do is I want you to read it to yourself, and once you've read it, I want you to put your card on your lap. So read it real quick and put your card on your lap. And then when I see everybody's card on their lap, I'll know that everyone's read it. So I want you to... Nope, white letter. There's only one set of white letters on this whole card. White letters. All right, so once you've read those white letters, thank you for putting the card on your lap. I appreciate that. Yep, but I'm talking about that part in the green right there. Just those white letters, right? So once you read it, put your card on your lap. Thank you for putting your card on your lap. Thank you for putting your card on your lap. All right, cool. I see most people have read it. So can you tell me how many, can anybody recite that sentence just from looking at it? Anybody recite that? All right, cool. You didn't have to. It was a trick. That was a trick question. What I want you to do now is I want you to go back. I want you to read it again. And I want you to count the number of F's that are in that sentence. The number of F's, as in Frank. F's in that sentence. And once you have a number, I want you to yell it out. Two. I got 2 F's.
4.
I got 5 F's.
1.
I got 1 F.
I got 4.
I got 4 F's. I got 6 F's. Okay, so stop right there. Wait a minute.
3.
Do we have different cards? Do you think, I'm cheap, okay? I'm going to just put it like that. I'm cheap. So do you think we have different cards?
4.
We don't have different cards. So how is it that some people have 1 F, some people have 2, 4, 5, I heard somebody say 6 F's. How is that possible?
2.
No, there's 5.
5.
There's 6. There's 5. There's 6. 6. I only got 3. 4.
You only got 3. All right. So let's stop right here just for a second. And I want you, oh, you got it now. Look, he's smiling too. He's like, I got it. It's 6. Right?
Why?
So yeah, the real answer, the correct answer is 6. But can you tell us why some of us didn't get all 6 at first? Yes, sir. You saw the rest of the word. You see the long words, but you don't see the short words of. And why do people oftentimes skip the word of? Yes, sir. Because it sounds like a V. Yes, sir. Because it's small.
I found
right?
the ofs, I just didn't find scientific in the last one.
So you found the ofs. Oh, so some people found the ofs, but they didn't find the other F's in scientific. Right? What I want to suggest to you is that sometimes we miss things not because we're not looking for them, but because we expect them to be different than what they are. We expect them to be different. And so I want you to take things at face value and recognize that things are what they are. And we'll move forward just a little bit. What I'd like for you to do let's go down to the bottom part. So there's 1, 2, and 3. What I want you to do at number 2 is I want you to read that sentence.
I already know it. I already read it.
You already read it. Can you read it for me?
It says, it does not matter what the order of the letters are as long as the first and last letters are in correct place. It is amazing what our minds can recognize.
It's amazing. It's amazing what our minds can recognize when we know what we're looking for. What's that? Say that louder so everybody can hear you.
I said these words are not spelled right.
These words are not spelled right. He's absolutely correct.
It's just different. It's spelled right, but it's just the word is spelled. The word is in a different. It's the same letters. It's the same letters, but it's in different places.
Are there ways that you've been able to make sense out of things that don't make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, can funny one word is spelled right.
Yeah, can, I think can is the only one that is spelled right. Or the.
Not our.
As. Yeah.
Not our. It is. Not as.
All right. So here we go. This is the last thing this is the last activity on this card that I want to do with you. So at number 3, what I want you to do is does anyone see a shape that looks like an arrow?
Yep.
You see a shape? Raise your hand if you see at number 3 if you see a shape that looks like an arrow. All right, cool. Do you see a shape that looks like a hat? Yes. All right, cool. So I got people who see the arrow and people who see the hat. Does anyone see a shape that looks like a finger pointing? Like, Uncle Sam, you're number 1, right?
That's the house.
All right.
Turn upside down, it's a house.
Okay, so are there other things that people see? So you see a house? All right.
Yeah.
Did anybody else see a house? Raise your hand if you see a house. Okay, cool. Are there any other shapes that you see? A dove? Or a duck. Okay, you see a duck? All right. A seal?
I don't know. It looks like one.
Half a platypus.
Half a platypus. All right, Perry, the platypus, right?
A dolphin.
A dolphin. At number 3, we're looking at number 3. Those shapes right there, number 3.
I see like a tank.
You see a tank.
That's a whale. I see a whale.
You see a whale. A ropa? Oh, okay. So does anybody see anything else that could actually give us information? Yes, sir, in the back. In the back. Yes. What? Fly. What you should be looking for is the word fly. Capital F, capital L, capital Y. I'll give you some time.
I see it. I don't see it.
So what I'll tell you is, remember the bird? Make sure that the bird's beak is pointing towards the ceiling. Put your thumb under all of the letters, under all the shapes, and put your index finger over all the shapes, and you'll see white letters on a black background.
Oh, see that.
So some people see it, some people don't, and some people are faking it, and it's okay. It's okay. But for those of you who couldn't see the shapes before, but who now can see the shapes, what did you have to do to be able to see those shapes? Yes. I don't need those back. Those are for you. Those are for you. So, what prevented people from saying the word fly?
The arrow, the finger.
The arrow, the finger, the yes.
Because since it was a white
Listen.
since it was a white space and we were looking at the black colors, our minds thought we were looking at the black colors and we didn't focus on the white.
So because it was in the white space, we were focused on the black spaces, which didn't allow us to see that, right? We were focused on something different. Remember when I started this whole presentation? What was one of my opening comments to you? That often, yes, sir. No, come on. Say it better than how she said it. Say it. That everything has changed, right? So is it possible that the people who have told you about how smart you are or are not could be telling you your impression, but telling you their impression, but it can actually be different than what they're telling you, than what the truth is? Who benefits from you looking at the black shapes? Who seems cool, or who's able to kind of do this trick on you? Who looks cool because they're able to get you to look at the black shapes?
You.
I do. You're absolutely right. Right? But is it possible that the reality is much different than what people are just telling you about yourself? I will tell you that I am not where I come from. I'm probably the last person that should be speaking in front of you, given where I come from. My family was poor. We grew up in the dirt. But we were never broke. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were never broke. My mother used to go to the Goodwill when it was affordable. She used to go to the Goodwill and get our outfits, and she would press those outfits. She cleaned those outfits. She shined the shoes on those outfits, and I never knew where those outfits came from. Because we weren't where we were coming from. You are more than the sum of your experiences. You are more than what other people think about you or what they say about you. You're more than that. But you'll never be more than that if you don't believe it. Anyone ever been in a fight? Yeah. What do we know? Those of us who've been in fights, what do we know? Sometimes we win some and sometimes we lose some. But how many of, I'm going to get your hand in just a second of it. But how many of us fight ourselves? How many of us fight ourselves? Hold your hands just for a second. I'm going to make this point, and then I'll have a little bit of time to answer some questions or get some more responses. How much sense does it make to jump yourself? I don't know about you, but I have frenemies out in the world. Friends that are also enemies, right? And I have some real enemies. Not many, but some people who just don't like me. I know it's hard to believe that there might be people who don't like me, but I recognize that, right? But if they're against me, why would I want to be against my own self? So, Andre, what do you mean? How can I be fighting myself? One of the things that we know about this great country is that anybody can be anything that they're willing to work towards. The lie that's been told is you can be anything that you want to be, and that's not true. Because I want to be an NBA player. But I don't know how to play basketball. Although when I was young, they used to call me, I had a basketball name. You want to know what my basketball name was? Priest. They used to call me Priest. Because I'd be crossing fools. Okay, never mind. Right? No, I want to be an NBA player, but I'm not willing to do the work it takes to be an NBA player. But I can be anything that I'm willing to work towards. And what I want to ask you is, if we know that education is the key, why do we fight so hard against it? So I want to encourage you that you're more than where you come from. That education is one of those keys that you can use to unlock doors. This is my last statement, because my grandfather was probably one of the most influential persons in my life. And he said something to me that was very interesting. He said, son, there's two ways to go through a door. You can use a crowbar. Is that an easy thing or a difficult thing to use a crowbar to get through a door?
I think it's pretty difficult.
I would imagine that it's quite difficult as well, right? Or you can use
A key.
keys.
What if the door is unlocked?
And so my grandfather, growing up in a time when the only tool he had access to was the crowbar, he encouraged me to get some keys. And so whatever you think about your education is actually what you think about yourself. It's boring. You know why education is boring? Because you're boring. You know why it's not helpful? Because you haven't figured out how it can be helpful. So take those keys. Don't listen to everything that everyone says about you. Find the truth about you. Because you were born human. You were born with a purpose. You were born on purpose. And you can contribute. And I thank you for your time. Thank you.
No, sir. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. 17-year-old.
What do you do with this?
So this is the other thing. So when I do my presentations, I don't give away all of my stuff so people can invite me back. So you have to invite me back to get the rest of that
I
stuff.
don't think enough people be here.
Okay, well maybe not. Maybe not. Yes, sir. I would hope so. I would hope if you lose, you fight another day too. Right? Yes, sir. Hold up, I can't hear. I just wanted.
She was Black Panther.
Yeah. Oh no, my dad didn't know Tupac's mom. No.
Yeah, he was Black Panther.
Yeah, my dad was he was a Black Panther, but the Black Panthers were national.
Yeah, it was like North Carolina.
Yep, it was all over the place. So there's a chance that they would have known each other, but they didn't. Another hand, another question? No? Okay. Yes.
Have you seen the movie Marvel what is it? Marvel Civil War, something like that?
Yes.
It was with the Black Panther. In Wakanda, they got bombed, and then Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Any other questions, comments, observations? Yes. Not a problem, man. Thank you for being here and paying attention. I appreciate it.